Black History Month, February. What better way to celebrate some young people doing some great things out in the community and across the globe? So, ladies and gentlemen, you guys and girls are in for a treat today. Today, I have a very, very special guest coming to me all the way. Well, she's live right now in Washington, D.C., and I'm here in Denver, Colorado. So, y'all stay tuned. We're going to have a very great episode. Colorado Beautillion celebrating their 30 under 30. But as always, if you haven't done so already, go ahead and make sure you hit that like, subscribe, comment, and share button. And I'm your host, Prince Dykes, the Prince of Investment. Y'all get ready. Stay tuned. Now, Colorado Beautillion does great things here across the nation, especially here in Denver, Colorado. Today's episode, we're going to highlight two young ladies who are doing great things, who are alumni of this awesome program. When I moved to Denver here 4 years ago, and I think I was a guest speaker. I think that's how I got introduced to the Colorado Beautillion, and I saw all the amazing things they're doing for young people, especially young people of color, getting them mentorship, guidance. So it's only right that we turn around and honor some of the alumni who were awarded the 30 under 30. But without further ado, let me introduce my first guest today. This is Miss JLynn Terroade. Hopefully I got that right. She's coming in live from Washington, D.C. So let's break her on. And JLynn, how you doing today, JLynn? Round of applause.
Hi, how are you?
Okay, so let's talk a little bit about you. So you were born and raised in Denver. You went out to Howard University, and you are pretty much just an art fanatic, it seems like, right?
Oh, yes, definitely.
And you want to go back to get you graduated. When did you graduate?
I
December?
actually just graduated this past December.
That's what it was. December you graduated, and now you're looking at going to get your master's degree in arts, right?
Yes, in art therapy specifically.
Okay, great. So congratulations on that. And also, you were very involved in your community in Washington, D.C. Tell us some of the things you did out there in Washington, D.C.
Yeah, definitely. So I was a part of a service and activism organization called 10 for 10. We spent our summer of 2020 basically fundraising and going out into the community, trying to raise awareness and definitely leading some marches and some demonstrations. So it was a great way to stay active, especially during like a moment in time where we were very disconnected as a whole, as a nation, as a world, honestly, and distribute the necessary resources that people needed and amplify their voices in as many ways as we could.
So, what are some of the demonstrations or some of the things that were important to you to go out and demonstrate for?
Well, one of the things we did first was distribute water bottles down. If you guys are familiar with the Five Points area, so we made sure that the population of people down there without housing had at least water at bare minimum. We got thousands of water bottles distributed that day, and my older brother came with me, so that was really impactful for me. I was grateful to have that moment with him, and I was grateful to be able to give back to the community. I'm from around Five Points, so that's like where I grew up, where I was born and raised. Another demonstration that we did was called the Rise Up Rally. Instead of celebrating 4th of July, we definitely we got a large crowd in front of the Capitol building, and we had a lot of speakers come and kind of attest to their stories, share their stories about growing up in a marginalized community. We had artists present. That was where I presented like one of my pieces for the very first time in front of a very large crowd. So we always incorporated the arts and amplifying and promoting the voices of our community and the people who look like us.
Got it. So, tell us about you're born and raised here in Denver, correct?
Yes.
So, what was life growing up in Denver, Colorado?
I loved it. I get that question a lot being out here in DC. Everybody's like, Colorado, that's so far away. What is it like? It was beautiful. I have a lot of friends back home that I'm really grateful for and I still keep in contact with. I spent a lot of my time growing up in the museums with my family, and I've always loved academics, so I was always involved in my school and extracurriculars, sports, all of the above. My parents made sure that I stayed busy and I stayed, doing things that could help me become a well-rounded individual. So I definitely, shout out to my parents for that.
Mhm. Shout out to your parents. Okay. Now, which one is colder, Washington D.C. or Denver, Colorado?
Definitely DC. I don't know what it is. I think it's the wind chill, but that'll take you straight out.
Well, because Denver is known for the outside people as being cold because they see snow all the time. They're like, "Oh, I bet you it's just freezing all the time." And I try to tell people like it's not as cold as it looks. I lived on the up in Connecticut, and I just was in DC a couple weeks ago too. And I'm like, man, it's just colder. I don't know if it's the water or whatever is going on,
Yeah,
right?
we got waterfront.
hmm Now, tell us some of the things you got a chance to visit Egypt while at Howard University. You went to HBCU. You went off to Howard, not Howard University, but to Egypt. How was your trip to Egypt?
I think about my trip to Egypt every single day. I still wear this cartouche around my neck from my trip there. It says my name in hieroglyphs. So I did a study abroad trip, and it was 2 weeks long. I studied with the Africana Studies department at Howard University. So I was there with 3 professors from Howard, as well as 2 professors from Morehouse. And it was a beautiful experience. We went into, I think, 5 pyramids total. We did 3 pyramids in one day once, though. And we traveled all throughout Egypt. So we started at the top, we made it down to the island of Aswan, through Cairo. So it was a very pivotal time in my life. And I'm really, really grateful that I took that opportunity. I was able to get a scholarship to fund me as well for that trip. So that was really, um, it was great, and I'm so glad that my school, my HBCU, has those types of endeavors for their students to take. And it was a moment for me to connect with my homage and basically just learn more about our roots, our history, where everything started initially before coming to America and being African American, all of the above.
Now, not only did you graduate college, looking to go back for your master's degree, you're also the executive coordinator for a nonprofit, right?
So I am the communications director for
Communications.
Howard University Alternative Spring Break.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, so that is a community service organization,
Got it.
student led at Howard, where we basically go to other communities, other cities, both domestically and abroad, and we do community service because a lot of places contribute to Howard's history and Howard's success. So we want to make sure that the students have the opportunity not only to appreciate these places, but appreciate the people in these places and help them in whatever way we can. So we do a lot of volunteer work. That's our motto is honesty and truth and service, excellence in truth and service. So we do as much service as we can.
Now, down in Puerto Rico, you're getting ready to go back to Puerto Rico, right?
Yes, I am.
So you did some community service down there?
Yeah, yeah, with alternative spring break.
Okay, so it was connected back to Howard University to your current job now. Okay, nice. That's awesome. You know what? I have never been to Puerto Rico. How was Puerto Rico?
Puerto Rico, when we went, it was right after, it was 2 years after Hurricane Maria had hit. So
Oh,
we were down there our initiative was to help with restoration and youth empowerment. So we were doing some demolition in houses, tearing down houses that needed to be refurbished after the hurricane. And we were painting schools that had some water damage. And it just needed to be beautified so the students felt welcomed back into their space of learning and their space of education. We were able to also volunteer at the Boys and Girls Club in Puerto Rico,
nice.
which is great because I am not fluent in Spanish and there was definitely a language barrier, but I was able to connect with those kids and have fun and play. And it was really invigorating.
Okay. So now what is besides going back to school and getting your grad degree in arts, because I know you love arts, you were featured in a few art shows out in the DC area. Tell us about that. How'd you get into the art community of the DC area?
So my major at Howard was psychology, and I minored in painting. And so I've always had a love for the arts. I've always had a passion. Like this is one of my pieces behind me.
Oh, nice.
So I the DC area and the DC scene has a very strong art presence, especially Black people in the arts. So we have this thing called Art All Night in DC. where you basically go out to different spots downtown and talk to artists, buy their art. And while I was out there, I was introduced to an artist who goes by DC Art Magic, and he hosts rooftop private art shows almost weekly. So I've been involved in those art shows. I've been able to network, sell my work there, and meet a lot of the other artists in DC who are prominent and also up and coming. So it's been a great platform for me to see what it's like to be an art vendor, see what the DC art scene is like, and definitely like hone in on my networking skills, especially in the art world.
Okay, very important. Now, the next thing I got to ask you, what's next for JLynn? You're only 22 years old. You've gone to college. You are, you're giving back to your community. You're being active in your community. I understand completely why you won, the 30 under 30, being involved in your community, giving back to your community, traveling abroad, finishing school, following your passion of art, selling art, things like that. What is next for JLynn at 22 years old?
I'm looking forward to getting my master's degree in art therapy and seeing where that takes me. I definitely would like to be able to practice art therapy in galleries or museum spaces. So I'm focusing on that niche right now. I'm trying to get as much experience as I can, especially in galleries. Right now, I am the graduate intern at the Howard University Gallery in the Fine Arts Building. So I am making sure that I'm creating connections in the museum and art world, and I am applying as much pressure as I can to pursue my degree in art therapy.
I like that. Applying the pressure, keep the pressure on. Now, I want to ask you this question. As a young Black woman, what advice you would, especially with the climate that's going on, things that's going on in the world and in the country and things like that, what advice? Because you moved to DC, which is a pretty predominantly Black city. It's chocolate city, right? Versus
Yeah.
in Denver, Colorado, is not as much, right? So growing up as a coming from Colorado, it's a young Black woman. What advice or what mentorship you would give to the younger version of you, or to that young little Black girl that's out there?
I would say follow your dreams, even if they seem like they're far, just go for it. I think one thing that I knew as a senior in high school when I was applying to my schools was that I wanted to leave Colorado. And it's not even to say that I don't love Colorado, because I do. It's just I know that there's so much out in the world to go discover and find out. And I honestly had never even been to Washington, D.C. before I applied to Howard. And as soon as I got in, I didn't go either. I first stepped foot on Howard's campus when I was moving in with my parents. So just take a chance and believe in yourself, put yourself out there, apply to whatever comes across your surface, whatever opportunity presents itself, take it, because you never know if you'll end up in Egypt or Puerto Rico or Washington, D.C. But there's only one way to find out.
Okay. Well, last thing before we got to get out of here, we got to take a break. How can people find more about you, or if people want to get in contact with you for your art, see your art, what's your social media, all of the good stuff like that? So if people want to stalk you or whatever the case may be, how can they do that? Tell us, how can we find you?
My art Instagram is JMARIE Visuals with a Z. So J Marie Visuals. And yeah, if you type my name in, you can find me on LinkedIn as well, JLynn Terroade on LinkedIn.
Okay. All right. Y'all got Miss JLynn. She's coming from Washington, D.C. I'm out here in Denver, Colorado, and we're broadcasting live right now in Honolulu, Hawaii, which it seems like it's late, but it's actually early in Hawaii. A little early. The sunlight is starting to go down in Hawaii. But we want to thank you for coming on. Is there anything you want to say before we get out of here?
Thank you so much for having me, and thank you, Miss Cheryl.
All right. Shout out to Miss Cheryl. She definitely loves you guys and always want to keep in contact with the alumni. But ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls of Trump age, we're going to take a quick break. I mean, a very quick break, and we're going to come back with more for the Colorado Beautillion 30 for 30.